These days, it's so hard to be impressed by things, especially things that you've seen or done before that aren't really a surprise. But some things do come along like this sometimes, and this has happened to me today. And introducing the 2025 Honda Africa Twin with DCT and electronic suspension. To get you up to speed, if you don't know, Honda has two versions of this bike, the standard one and the more road-based touring one called the Adventure Sports. This is the standard one. Both models were significantly upgraded for 2024. Then the engine received an increase in low-end and mid-range torque, and the DCT was refined for smoother, more natural shifts. They also addressed rider comfort by adding a new 5-way adjustable windscreen. A huge change for off-road riders was the switch to tubeless tyres, which makes on-the-go punch repairs much easier. Some of the significant differences between the standard and the Adventure Sports model is that the Adventure Sports model has a 19-inch front wheel. It's got a lower seat height of 835 millimeters or 855 millimeters, depending on which setting you have it on. It's got 30 millimeters less ground clearance than the standard model, and it's also got more road-going tyres and a larger fuel tank. For comparison, the wet weight of the Adventure Sports model with DCT and electronic suspension is 253 kilograms, and the standard one here with both those things is 244 kilograms. So like for like here, the standard model is 11 kilograms lighter. For reference, the standard model without the DCT and electronic suspension is 231 kilograms. So electronic suspension adds 2 kilograms and DCT adds 9. The Adventure Sports model does feel physically heavier and wider than this bike here. That model also has Showa's EERA suspension as standard, and you have to add that to the standard bike if you want it. EERA stands for Electronically Equipped Ride Adjustment. I asked for this standard bike earlier in the year, and Honda accidentally gave me the Adventure Sports one. At the time, I was disappointed because I really wanted the off-road one, but after riding the Adventure Sports model, I was so impressed with how fun, practical, and easy to live with it was. I ended up using that bike through the winter for shoots, errands, tours, and even some light off-road. The thing I loved about the overall package was how right it felt mostly overall. That Adventure Sports Africa Twin was the manual gearbox with clutch bike because at the time I'd not tried automatic gearbox or DCT and had no intention of trying it at all. So I was one of the resistance. The review of that bike is on my channel here. I'll leave a link to it in this video's description if you want to check it out. Fast forward to the end of this year, and this is now the third bike I've tried with an automatic gearbox. The first was the 2025 BMW R1300 RT with BMW's ASA gearbox, and I only tried it because one of our press bikes needed to go in for a software update, and they gave me that bike for a couple of weeks while it was in. When Rob at BMW told me that the bike had an automatic gearbox, I laughed. And in fact, this morning I handed back the second bike this year I rode with an automatic gearbox, which was the 2025 Honda CRF1100L SE Rebel that I'd been riding and reviewing for my other channel, which is called the Classic Motorcycle channel. That bike has a retuned version of Honda's Africa Twin engine. I say retuned because everyone says it's detuned, which makes it sound gutless, but it's definitely not. It's just different. Okay, so back to the Africa Twin. This bike has electronic suspension, which I've also tried a few times on various other bikes, like the Triumph Tiger 1200s, and a few BMWs like the R1300 RT, and even the R18B with its automatic suspension. I'm a bit of a suspension nerd, and I do spend a lot of time setting up my own bikes, spring rates, compression, and rebound. So I was keen to see how Honda's electronic suspension goes in this package and compare it to the other manufacturers' bikes I'd ridden. Okay, first impressions. So the first thing you notice when you look at this bike is how high quality and well put together it all is. The color of the bike here is pearl glare white with pearl hawkseye blue metallic tricolour. and it's only available on the electronic suspension model. When you get on the bike, the reach of the bars is perfect and it's neutral. Upright riding position is very familiar to me, and it's actually my preferred way of riding. Honda have pretty much perfected the standard exhaust sound on this bike, and it sounds so lovely and deep and quiet and is perfect company when you're riding along. The bike just feels so connected to the road when you ride it. The tires feel sticky and the brakes feel strong, and the suspension just glides over the bumps. This bike feels immediately much lighter than the Adventure Sports model, which did sort of feel big and bulky with its 24.8 litre tank and full pannier set. As I've mentioned, this bike has a 21-inch front wheel and the Adventure Sports model has a 17-inch one. As someone who rides a lot of off-road, I like a bigger front wheel to roll over the bumps, and they don't get so hung up in the potholes on the tracks we call roads in this country. If you've watched any of my other reviews, you know that I don't do too much research up front or watch any other reviews on bikes before I ride them, because I don't really want to be influenced by what other people say. Also, I really value a first impression of a bike, because often when we take a bike out for a test ride, we only get it for a couple of hours, and that's exactly the amount of time that I've spent on this bike. A lot of the time we're wowed by how new bikes feel to ride, because they're so different to what we're used to, and they really impress us, but sometimes there's things that just don't feel right, that need to be potentially dialed in, which could make the bike feel so much better, which can actually also affect our opinion. So I like to do a first impressions video, because it's similar to a quick test ride. Then my full review goes over how the bike is once it's set up, and I'll spend enough time on it to have a decent opinion. Today I did a good mix of road and off-road to put the bike through its paces. I played around with the riding modes but didn't get too deep into the suspension. I think everyone knows that the engines on these bikes are great, and the one on this bike is no different. I prefer to ride bikes lower in their rev range and use their torque, and this one is really lovely to ride like that. I like the DCT, and it felt familiar because I've just come off that CMX1100. Off-road conditions were dry today, so I could push the bike a bit on its stock tyres. Not really a good test for tyres when it's dry, but it's nice to push the suspension into things when it's dry so you can really test its damping. Straight out of the box in gravel mode, off-road, this bike feels good, but I know there's so much more I can do to make it feel better. The Adventure Sports model I had earlier in the year had the same Showa ERA suspension on it, and it responded really well to adjustments in settings, and I got it feeling great by the end of my time with it. So I'll be doing a deep dive into the suspension in my full review, but all of today the suspension felt good, but overall I'd say it felt like it had too much rebound and not enough compression, in that it was bobbing up and down too much on and off road and blowing through the travel. This might be how some people like a bike to feel, but I don't. I prefer to be able to feel the terrain that's under the bike when I'm riding along, so I can react to it. Preload on the suspension felt good, and I didn't bottom the bike, but I really didn't hit any big jumps or big hits, so I think I'll be going into the settings and trying to dial in a bit more compression and rebound so the bike's not so bobby. DCT also felt good too. I tried the manual gearbox today on the road and I really enjoyed it. Not sure how I like the DCT off-road though, and I think I'll miss a clutch. There's so much more to dial in with these bikes within the rider modes, and I'm really looking forward to getting my head around it. The DCT on this bike has a few different settings for when it can shift in the rev range when it's in auto, so I'm looking forward to trying that out. Another thing I noticed when I stood up off-road is that the bike really feels skinny at the seat, and if you grip it with your knees, it sort of pushes your riding position back a little. It could be that the foot pegs are a little wider in the frame, and maybe I'm just not used to that. It was an odd feeling, and it's nothing significant, but it is there. I did take the Adventure Sports model off-road in the wet and very quickly found its limits. This one already feels so much different to that one. If you like buttons to push on your controls, you'll be happy because this bike has a lot of them. I can only really remember what half of them do at the moment. I don't find the Honda menus to be particularly intuitive, but because I've ridden a version of this bike before, it feels sort of familiar. There's a lot I don't know yet, but I have time to get back into it and get my head around all the settings. That TFT display is touchscreen, by the way, which is pretty cool, and it works with gloves. The seat has 2 heights, and I've already set it to its high position. The seat was very comfortable on the last bike, so it'll be nice to compare it to this one. Screen was also great on the last bike, and wind protection was excellent on the motorway, so I'll be interested to see if this one is as good. Alright, next steps. From here now I'm going to have a good read of the manual and get my head around all the rider modes and suspension settings. I also take the rubber inserts from the foot pegs on the bikes I ride, so I'll be doing that on this one too. Levers and pedals aren't set for me yet, so got to do that. The plan is now to get a good amount of road and off-road on this bike and really get to know it over the next 2 weeks. I'll also be taking my wife on the back, so we'll be keen to see what the pillion comfort is like and how the suspension deals with her on the back. If there's anything you'd like me to answer while I've got the bike, do let me know and I'll do my best to answer your questions in the next video. Alright, that's it. Thanks for watching.